GM, and welcome to the Boonafide Experience podcast. I'm your host, Kyle, but really, most people just call me Boona. Y'all, this is a Web3 podcast where I interview artists, builders, gamers, and of course, DeFi wizards. The mission here is to highlight trustworthy individuals in the space, share amazing artwork, and build a strong community as we rewrite the history of IP and entertainment forever. Y'all, if you're new here, and most of you guys are, so if you guys do enjoy Web3, if you guys are looking for an authentic on-ramp, if you guys want to continue to learn more about this space, I am constantly evolving, and so are my guests. Please go ahead and subscribe to this video or audio platform, whichever one that you're on, whether it's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Caster. I believe I'm on all the things. So click the button that gets you notified every time I drop a new episode. And what you'll also be doing is helping a lot of new people who need to learn this and who are looking for a trustworthy source to find out where they fit in Web3. That is the main mission here. There is so much noise, and what I am trying to do here is be a signal above that noise. So if you do enjoy it and you believe in that mission as well, please go ahead and do the thing. Helps the community out as well. If you're looking to do another thing that gives you more access, I do have an exclusive Patreon channel where you do get early access to episodes about 2 to 3 days before the episode publishes live. And you get exclusive access to myself and my Discord community, which, by the way, we had one of our members post a 15,000x gain. So this dude's been hustling for as long as he's come into Web3, just being consistent, super disciplined. Really love to see that. It's cool to see people get W's in this space. It happens with with some dedication, some hard work, and some awareness, and a little bit of degeneracy. So if you like that, come join the Discord. If you want exclusive access with a little bit more access, join the Patreon. Put the link in the website, also in the description below in the YouTube channel. So let's get to this week's episode. I sat down with Ramon Govea, and if you do not know who Ramon is, and if you see me looking down, I have to he is doing so many things in the Web3 space. I have to glance down a little bit because they're all these things tie together in such a beautiful way. Essentially, he is the founder of Myth Division, which is a brand that's been creating IP well before Web3, mostly in the form of comics, animations, movies, films. Ramon is no stranger to the scene in Hollywood, understands exactly what problems exist and exactly where to solve them as a true crypto native and a true Web3 native. So just to give you some context, Myth Division has multiple legs. Has everything from his Bored Ape Seeks Yacht Club comic book, where he licenses his own ape plus characters from the surrounding NFT community. Got a Cat Gang, I know that's in there as well. His PFP project Waifu Warriors, and Myth Division access tokens, which unlock experiences in his city that he's building in Sandbox called Orangurock, which is its own beast. We go over each project individually, how it all connects to each other, what his vision for Orangurock is, the problems that it's solving, origin stories, some banter. Man, this guy has been on his game forever. He's not noisy. He's super consistent and has been building since day one. Disclaimer: I do hold an access token. I do hold an all access token, and I do hold another Myth Division access token as well. So just heads up disclaimer, I do own one of those, have owned it since day one. I have been bullish on Ramon, bullish on Myth Division, and I'm excited to hopefully get you on board and be bullish with me as well. Let's go and get started with the show. GM, Ramon, how are you, man?
GM, good to talk to you, Kyle. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, man, this has been a long time coming. I think we first connected back in, I think it was November, December, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, man. But
last year was crazy.
It's been a wild ride, and we were talking a little bit offline. I said just when I think there's a cap on what Myth Division's doing, there's 8 more things that get released in a month, and I'm like, well, here we go. The man's busy. He's obviously doing it.
Yeah, just creating, man, just building. Look, it's a huge opportunity right now when you look at what is being built in Web3. So I'm just I can't waste a second. I already have so much content that we created beforehand, so it's just about intelligently rolling it out. It's just it's a lot.
Yeah, which is the thoughtful is not a word you typically associate with Web3 right now. So there's some people that are doing it, and those are the projects that typically succeed, or they're typically the ones that don't get any FUD. And I want to segue into, just to give a quick disclaimer for those who are listening. Like, I own definitely a piece of Ramon's project, Myth Division. I own one of the Alpha Access tokens. I've been with it since the beginning. So if there are some questions that are about like my holdings, you understand why. But wanted to be,
Now's the time to ask all your questions. Right?
yeah. Wanted to be perfectly clear. Like, I am bullish on Ramon, and part of how I found out, one of the reasons that, or one of the ways I found him, was, just obviously through Twitter. But when I go and check people and I go and research people, I saw that, you had all of this content already produced. Like, you had worked with all these major studios, all these major platforms. Regardless of Web3, you were still making comics. I mean, I saw that, and it was an active business. I said, well, most people here don't know what the hell they're doing. So this guy looks like he does. So took a bet, bought a few Axis tokens, bought a few, minted a few waifus, bought a few comics, burning for the Axis token, man. Been with you since day one, man. So,
no, that's like the biggest question. I appreciate your support, dude. I mean,
yeah,
what we're trying to build is really ambitious. So,
yeah,
and none of it is possible without you and everyone else that's like in Discord and on Twitter. So.
When you nailed
asking about those burns.
You nailed the second piece of it. It's number one, you already did shit, but you're also really ambitious. And I love the ambition, but a lot of times I can't go with some of these teams that like are very ambitious because they have no credibility to like back that ambition. And it's an attractive trait, but if you haven't done anything before, it's hard to build confidence around that, Yeah, man. Well, cool. I mean, so I gave a little background of how I met you, man. I want to start a little bit prior to Web3. Of course, I want to ask all the questions about, Myth Division or Ragnarok, all the projects you're doing here. But give a little background of like where you were before this, like where you were before this, and what really attracts you about Web3.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got into crypto a long time ago. I had heard about Bitcoin back in like 2010 or 11, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
I still don't even remember exactly when it was, but it's funny. During that time, I was just researching. I was on the computer like all the time, just learning about just the innovative ways to use the internet. And so I had learned about like info marketing, and I was following just kind of influencers that were online, really. And I remember my girlfriends, throughout that entire period, were always like, "What the fuck are you doing on the computer all the time?" And I was just like, I'm learning, I'm researching, I'm gonna build a business. And I built a ton of businesses that most of them failed. I got into just like a bunch of different, some of them Ponzi schemes. I got rugged on a bunch of stuff. It was just like a lot of learning, right? At the time I was waiting tables. So I remember I like started mining Bitcoin in like 2011, and then I don't know what the fuck happened. I think my girlfriend and I broke up, and like, I stopped using that computer. Who knows? Like, I don't even know what happened anymore.
Oh my God.
And I didn't think about crypto for a few years.
Right.
And then I guess 2015 or 16 came around, and I started hearing about Ethereum doing really well. And Bitcoin was like way more than it was back in 2000. So I was like, whoa, if that happened to Bitcoin, this might happen to Ethereum. And I remember Ethereum was like less than $300. I don't even remember how much it was. But around that time was when I bought in a lot of Ethereum.
Got it.
And so anyway, and more Bitcoin too, and I was just really bullish on both of those, and I kind of experimented with a couple other cryptos. But long story short, after that big pop happened a few years ago with Bitcoin and like Ethereum kind of with it, I was able to cash out some, and kind of like my whole perspective on crypto just changed, because I could see the potential at that point of, not having all your money in the official US dollar.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Which there's a whole other conversation about that. But at that point I was kind of like, oh shit, there's something to this. And then, I kept kind of trading. I was still cashing out a lot because I had like no money, dude. I was like bartending, waiting tables, taking side gigs, and then at the same time running Kickstarters and financing my own comics, like you said.
Got it.
And that's how I built the company. At the time, I was like producing stuff, so I was living in LA, and I had side gigs where I would take commercial jobs, and I'd write and produce, and sometimes direct a commercial or a video for like these channels. But that doesn't pay the bills, so I was still working and learning about crypto, and so I'd put money in on the dips. I'd buy the dips, and then I'd have to sell at the peaks, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just how it was for a little while, and then eventually last year, I got on Clubhouse. A friend of mine sent it to me, and I was like, all right, I'll check this out, because there were a lot of influencers there that and also there's a lot of knowledge on there. And that was like the biggest thing for me. Like there were investors and VCs and people that I could just soak up knowledge like really quickly.
Right.
And that's when I found NFT Clubhouse and started learning about what NFTs were. It was like February, and literally listened for like a month. And then March, I bought my first NFT, and then Bored Apes came along, and I didn't mint, but I got to buy in once I found out about the commercial IP rights, and then the rest is history. At that point, Mint Division was already a company, so I just kind of went to my partners. I was like, well, I'm going to be buried in NFTs for a while. The whole model is shifting a little bit, but it was mostly because it was being financed by Kickstarter, and now we're at a point where I was able to forego some investors and just build.
That's sick, man. Did you find any resistance when you're transitioning? Like when you said, "Hey, I'm going to be stuck in NFTs for a while." Like, did you find any was there a lot of pushback on that?
Not really, but that's because I keep my circle kind of small. So, over the years, I've kind of found I have to, every once in a while, just make cuts. Having people that are constantly in your zone, like negative talking you, that can really fuck you up. I mean, it really can. So you have to, it's important to hear criticism, and as long as it comes from a constructive, heartfelt place, you can have a conversation about it. But no one really pushed back. I mean, my partner Neil, he's a co-founder of the company. Nicole, she didn't really fully understand it, but she trusted, because she had seen me go from, hey, let's make movies, and I'm going to make comics, when I did nothing. And she knew, she watched my journey to having Myth Division, working for NBA player, managing his content. I was able to prove myself over the years. And so now this is just the next stage, next level.
Yeah, man. I mean, and I think to go back before we touch on Myth Division a little bit, is that a lot of people. I was actually having dinner with a close friend yesterday, and he's one of those people. He's like, look, man, I'm not gonna shit on NFTs. I'm not gonna shit on Web3, but he's like, I just have such a hard time valuing something that is not physical. Like he's like, that was where he's at. He's like, look, man, I have my strong beliefs. I have but I'm open to having my mind changed. Like if you present a good enough argument, if you ask questions, I'm fine with it. And what was really interesting is when I told him, in order to understand the value of Bored Apes, I had to tell the backstory of the punks first, to show why it was really because the Bored Apes don't make sense unless you talk about punks. And once I showed him the journey, because when I talked to him about punks, he's like, why don't they have rights? What the hell are you buying? I said, it's a good question, And so that was where Bored Apes differentiated themselves, and they were first mover in doing so.
Correct.
So it allowed for all this opportunity. And you could, by the end of the conversation, I'm not going to go in the whole conversation, but by the end, you could tell there was the ice melted a little bit. He wasn't quite there, but at least he understood that part. He understood the royalties part. He understood that it was trustless. He understood he's still at that point, he just has to move past his own. He just has to get out of his own way,
His own bias, exactly.
Right.
Well, the irony of that stance is I've had conversations with people, and they're like, "Oh, I just can't trust anything that I can't touch." Right? And I'm like, how often do you touch your money when you use your credit card or your bank card? Or nobody really touches cash anymore. Right. So I'm like, it's especially when we're talking about cryptocurrency. Well, it's not really real money. Someone told me oh, well, it's not real money. I'm like, really, it's not real money, huh? How real is the money that you see go from your paycheck to a piece of paper, that says you have this much money, which literally you could tear up and burn, and it's come on, guys. So I have that conversation a lot about what's real money and what's not, and what's real, and I'm on the blockchain. This art is certified, right? In ways that you normally would need a certificate that is destructible. So that's the big difference.
Yeah. And I told him that too. And I also like he brought up the question about art being stolen and like if you can just save it and like upload it from another address. I said Web3 doesn't solve the problem of people being thieves. Like it doesn't solve that problem, but if it's from a wallet that wasn't from the original creator, you know that it's a fake. And sure, someone has the potential to be scammed. Someone has the like it doesn't eliminate all of these problems, but it helps provide transparency so these people have less of a shot. Like it's the percentage gets lowered. And that's really, when you present it like that, you know, it's hard to argue against that. You know, even the biggest skeptics. But fun conversation, man. It's nice to talk to someone who's like who doesn't really understand it, but they're capable of having a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're capable of
conversations to have.
Yep. Because he's a big sports cards guy, so I had to like lean into a little bit of that. I had to lean into a little bit of the. Yeah, 100%, man. But Myth Division, man. Like, so when I describe to people, I still struggle to describe to people because there's so many different legs to Myth Division. I want you to like you mentioned pitching a lot of people. I want you to give a quick pitch on like what Myth Division is, man.
Yeah, sure. So this is something that I've been talking about for probably 10 or 11 years now. Wow. But I've always had this vision of a company that is truly multi-platform. So being able to have, one company that's able to tell stories across film, television, comics, gaming, right? All of the above, essentially. Yeah. And animation as well, of course. But that's like fast spilling over into film and television. Right?
Yeah.
Still, more so was in the East for a long time. So anyway, so it's just kind of having one company that can do all of that, right? Because we have this kind of big problem with storytelling in the traditional sense, in the old school Hollywood sense. You have just like companies that have to outsource all these different smaller companies to execute the vision, right? To tell one big story. If you look at like the only company really that is effectively doing that is a company that bought two smaller companies, right? You have Star Wars and Marvel Cinematic Universe that are able to effectively take one world and then tell that story across multiple platforms. And so I had been pitching for 10 years, like, you know, a team that I put together can do this. We can do this. All we need is this, some resources, and we can truly execute that kind of continuity at a large scale. And, you know, no one really could see it because everyone was like, well, but what do you do? And we're like, all of it. And they're like, no, we get that. But what do you do? Right? And it's like, they constantly want to try and put you in a box. Are you making films? Are you doing the animation? Are you doing games? It's like, no, you don't understand. We can put together the team. We can do all of it. And so for a number of years, I was meeting VCs, investors, studios, production companies, trying to explain this and explain like what we were putting together in one shared universe. And everyone was just too skeptical. They were just like, or they didn't get it and couldn't wrap their heads around the business model. And I was like, well, the business model is direct to consumer because we can do it on Kickstarter. And I'm slowly doing it on Kickstarter.
Got it.
It's taking me a lot longer there than what NFTs have enabled. So that's really all it is now we've taken our worlds, our stories, and we've launched 2 so far IP on our like NFT platform, I guess you could say. And that's just Waifu Warriors, which is our first generative PFP project. And there's a story behind that. And then also, we've bought a bunch of apes. So we're highly invested in apes, and we're building a whole universe around some of those characters. And that's Orangurock, and that's Ape Seeks Yacht Club. All those fit into the same world. So we're just kind of having fun and experimenting using that IP and having fun engaging with the community and just building excitement around this sort of shared hype for this project and what Yuga Labs is doing, what the Gutter Cat Gang is doing, right? Because there's community there. So we're having fun kind of trying to innovate there. And then all of our successes, and as we figure it out, we're applying that to all the IP that we'll be rolling out under the division. Some of which has been already published, and then some of which is in development to be distributed soon.
That's a lot to unpack there. So that's a lot to unpack there, man. So let's unpack it into. Let's start with Waifu Warriors. You mentioned there was a story behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I got into NFTs right last year,
Mm.
and I noticed because my wife kept asking, she was like, "Oh, that's cool. Where's all the women?" And I was like, "Oh, that's not a thing yet." And there weren't.
Valid point.
There was no all female project when we first conceived of Waifu Warriors, and so my wife was like, "Oh, well, you've got to do something sexy because." You don't want them looking like the apes. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
that's a fair point. And we didn't really want to do animals. And I was trying to think of like a niche audience that I knew we had already, which is people that are into anime and comics and video games, right? With an Eastern influence too. So we had this idea for Waifu Warriors. Like we didn't want them to be just like sexy waifu in the traditional sense. My wife is an entrepreneur herself, and she's really successful in her own way. So we wanted them to be badass warriors. And so, I talked with my partner Nicole, and we had a good conversation about like what it would be, and it was really all about female empowerment. So that's kind of what the whole idea is. So all the stories that stem from that world that we're like currently writing, developing, and producing right now, all of that. It centers on these just badass warriors who also happen to be sexy. So it's pretty cool. We're having a lot of fun with it. But we're getting ready to roll out the allies, which is a lot of fun because that's going to be an extension. It's almost like, I guess what the Gutter Cat Gang did pretty effectively with their species rollouts, where we're going to have another entry point with these characters, and you'll be able to mint one for free if you have a waifu. We're also going to do a public sale to be able to get one of these outfits. And they're going to be pretty badass too, so I don't want to give away too much.
Don't give away too much, man. Stir up the FOMO, man.
We'll just tell people, hey, there's alpha on Kyle's podcast. Go watch it.
That's right, man. Yeah, you got to, man. No, I like that. So when it comes to waifus, like we have these waifus. We're gonna have the companions. I know that. It's public, so I can say this. If not, I'll edit it out. But potions are coming soon. For the waifus.
Potions coming out Wednesday. So Wednesday is when the free mint period begins.
Forgive me. So like when it comes to the potions, what is that? Because I know these waifus are going to be like battled in like an arena. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so I want to dive into that part because that's still like the gaming part of NFTs. Like I'm a gamer at heart, man. Like I grew up on Halo. Like I grew up on Gears of War, Call of Duty. Like
I had to stop playing Halo because I got too good. Halo 2. Nice.
Halo, and I already like you, man. Halo. Everyone says Halo 3, man, but the real ones know Halo 2 is
Halo 2.
Yeah, the real ones know.
Me, it was swords and sticky grenades.
Yeah,
and people hated me. Fucking hated me. So
well, that's.
I'm playing too much. I think I'm playing this way too much.
Dude, that sword lunge.
All my joy from these, one-on-one battles and 1-on-3 battles, and then it got nuts, and I was like, all right, I gotta stop.
Well, dude,
I did stop playing video games for a while.
The sword lunge in Halo 2 was really it was way overpowered. Like you lunging across the map. I mean, the double shots, the quad shots, the BXRs, like that. That was all the broken shit in that game that they just rolled with, man. Because that was before like patch updates and like all these things with video games. Like they just launched a product and it is what it is.
Sniping was so sick in that game. You could like snipe and then shoot yourself as a sword across the fucking map. It was nuts.
Insane, man. We could have an entire chat. Like it's funny enough, Ramon, man. Like because when I started doing podcasting, it didn't start off in Web3. I was interviewing people in esports before this, and even before that, I was just doing solo episodes. Like I was just like to prove a concept to myself that I could actually do this.
Nice.
I recorded like 15 episodes. It really is, man. So I just said I took we talked about Gary Vee before this. Like I took one of those approaches where I just said, you know what, I'm gonna record 10 episodes. I have no clue what they're gonna be about. It's gonna be about my life experience, about game, whatever the fuck I want to talk about. I'm gonna record it on my phone. The solo episode I recorded about Halo back in 2019 is still my highest downloaded episode. I have yet to go back and listen to it just because I kind of like it. I kind of want it to be just like a little enigma for me. I kind of just like want to for me, it's special to not go back and listen to it. But anyway, so video games, Waifu Warriors, so describe how this works, man, because I'm still a little confused on this. So I'd love to understand how this works in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, so the first aspect to the gaming piece of what we're building is really going to start in the sandbox. And so we're experimenting. We actually have a conversation with them this week. With Sandstorm, awesome team of guys that are officially working with Sandbox to build out community. So we're having a conversation with them about scaling this, but we're going to be building we're in the design phase right now. Our art director is overseeing a bunch of different sort of pieces of the worlds that we're building. Namely right now his focus is Orangurock. So we're almost done with that, and then we're moving on to the actual build for Waifu Warriors. We're basically going to be building out a whole kind of gaming experience inside the sandbox. And so all of those traits that you see when you're looking at the Waifu Warriors, like on OpenSea or LooksRare, or any other platform, you should be able to see the metadata. But we have boosts, and so those boosts are going to directly correlate with like the skills that you would see in a sandbox game. So like dexterity, strength, charisma. We have like a new charisma function. We're trying to innovate with. But the long game here beyond sandbox is we're building some stuff in Unreal Engine. And we're starting again with Orangurock. And so I know some of those leaks have come out. Of course I leaked them, but we've leaked a couple different images and people are like, whoa, what is that? And I don't.
And then you delete them
because there's people waiting to take ideas on Twitter. But we're building an Unreal too. So I'm looking at everything in sort of phases, just like I always have. Even comics to a degree. I love comics, and I have been reading them since I was 8 years old. But I knew ultimately, like from a financial standpoint, comics don't make a lot of money, and they don't make enough money to fund animation and video games.
Right. So animation's expensive. What's that? Animation's expensive. Like dude.
It's so expensive. I mean, I just had a conversation with a company the other day, and they were like quoting me on some stuff, and I was like, "That is outrageous, dude, outrageous." But they can charge that because they're in such high demand right now, and there's companies with huge wallets that are able to afford that. So for us in our bootstrap phase, I'm being very conservative with what we're spending, but majority of what we're spending is on the content. So I just have to make sure that I can like get that return on that cost and have enough extra to be working on the next thing. So that's really all it is with the gaming too. Is we're starting with Sandbox. We're going to be building in these features that are enhanced with the potions. So when you drink a potion, it's going to impact those boosts or those skills.
Got it.
So everyone sort of has those base skills right now on OpenSea, and they're pretty low. They're like, 1, 3, 4, like they're not very much. So when you drink the potions, you're going to be getting boosts.
Gotcha.
To some of those traits. And then that will impact the game, and not just the sandbox game, but ideally what we're building in Unreal. And then beyond, like we want to form partnerships with the AAA gaming company, and once they really open up to this idea of NFTs, right? We want to be right there at the forefront of that conversion, right? So that we can have a Waifu Warriors fighting game and other games. I mean, we're really trying to build out a franchise here. We're not just trying to do a cash grab for 2-3 years or 6 months or whatever. Like we're building. We really want to see this thing go far.
This is ambitious, man. And so I one thing that I see a lot of people struggling with it because one of the things that Web3 introduces is a way to reward people that invest in you early. And there's a lot of different tools where we do this. And so, but also at the same time, how do you when it comes to Waifu Warriors, one of the questions I had, or one of the thoughts that came up while you were speaking, is that would people be able to like either pay to come see these events like in Ragnarok or in any of the metaverses that you're building? How do you make this to where the holders are rewarded, but yet the broader community can still participate? Is that something y'all have thought about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the biggest question that I keep having for Sandbox. Because right now we know that there's some limitations on how many people can be in the space at once. And then there's, when thinking about gaming, and this is why I always find it interesting that everyone promises to make a game, because there's so much that goes into it, like so much, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're thinking about like the different ways to access things like Sandbox. There's the multiplayer experience, but then there's a single player experience. You can't really mix those two. I mean, imagine, trying to create rules and even if you look at like an MMO, right? There's World of Warcraft, and they have their ways of how they can scale teaming up with groups and fighting a monster because it's going 24/7. And then there's like The Witcher, right? Or Skyrim, which is like, I don't know if Skyrim is multiplayer, but you have those games where it's like there are certain ways to go about accomplishing your mission, and if you had 7 people there, it all of a sudden just becomes either too easy or like you have to have ways to accommodate for that. So Sandbox is no different. There's kind of 3 ways we're looking at it. There's the social hub where you go there and you can watch a concert, right? And it's not really like gated in a gamified way. And then there's the potential single player experience and the multiplayer experience. So I won't tell you exactly what we're doing.
Right.
But there are those things to keep in mind as you build. And so that's really what we're thinking about, is how to keep that structure in place so that it's still fun and not either too easy or too boring.
Yeah, and that is like, I feel like that is like the question, is like, how do you make this accessible but still make the value of what you're producing go up, and to reward those people that were early. Because and one thing I also wanted to touch on was the AAA aspect, because like I interviewed a guy named Alex Paley. He built him and his team built a game called Mini Nations on Solana, and super fun game, and there's no mention of like NFTs. There's no, like, it's meant to be a fun game at the core. He's been making games for 10 plus years, and it was a really cool concept, and it helped open my eyes to this, because I, as a gamer, I'm like, okay, well, how does AAA participate? Because selfishly for me, I just want to own my Valorant skins. Like, that's all I just want to own those, and I can't. And because Valorant skins are fucking sick. Like, they have some of the best skins out of any game that I've ever seen. And they charge a pretty penny for them, and they're super limited. And why can't I own them? But the gaming community, because I still have a toe in both worlds, is still very polarized, and against this. And is that kind of y'all's strategy? Is it like, hey, build something dope for a couple years, like make sure that they're aware of you, so then when they finally come around?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, pretty much. Cool. Because we've had conversations with gaming companies too, and even they don't know how to approach it, because look, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company in some cases, right? Yeah. And they have an audience that they've got to cater to, and they can't. I mean, they could, but they don't want to lose like 25% or 30% of their players by switching over to NFTs. Now, what they're not thinking about is how much more they can gain by making that transition, right? It is what it is. But there's still this period of like uncertainty and risk tolerance. A lot of these companies don't have that high risk tolerance. They have to like bet on things that they know are gonna. Such a no-brainer that they're not really taking much risk at all. And that's just how, I was talking in a chat with a few other apes the other day, and we were talking about exactly that. They're just so like low in terms of like how much risk they'll take. So you have to, it gives us an opportunity because we can be high risk right now and make the strides we need and get the funding we need to keep building and compete in space. So that's why I'm pumping out so much and doing like 16 to 18 hour days doing this, because this is sort of a window of opportunity, and it's not going to be open forever. So if we can get as far as we can right now, in 3 years, we'll just be so well positioned that I can fucking sleep 8 hours or whatever.
Whatever normal people do. Yeah.
Whatever normal people do, although I've never been one to, like, I don't know. It's not a good thing. I don't recommend it.
Well, but you are who you are. I'm a huge fan of the band Tool. Like, I'm a super elitist. I'm a super cult fan when it comes to that. And, I was reading a couple interviews when they released their Fear Inoculum album, and they were interviewing Danny, and their creative process, he's like, I don't recommend this for the faint of heart. Like, our process is grueling. It's frustrating. It takes so much time, but it works for us.
How could it not? You listen to the music and it is like
perfection.
It's on another level. It's like a mastery of the craft, right?
Yeah.
And that's like, I love that you brought them up, because that's like how I approach everything we do. And I'm like, I look back on our old work and I'm like, oh, that could have been better. Or, oh, I wish I had done that. You know, I'm constantly criticizing my old work as complete garbage. So it's just like, if I don't feel like this is the best work I've done, then it's like not good to put out.
Yeah, it's the curse of being a creative, you know, because regardless, people like your work, and a lot of people are there for the journey. So one, and we're gonna touch on one last thing that Maynard said, is that there was an interview that he had where it was when his book was released, and it was one of the few moments where like he does interviews and he goes somewhat in depth, but this one he went really, really in depth, which is a very like rare opportunity, because the man just doesn't like people in general, you know. So but you know, someone asked the cliche question, you know, like you've had so much success in like not only just Tool, but in a perfect circle, Pussifer, your vineyards, your like you do jujitsu, you have a family. Like with all the success, they asked a cliche question, like what keeps you going? And he gave a really, I thought he was gonna like blow it off and like kind of give a, you know, just as much effort as the question kind of answer. But what he said was really interesting. He's like, because it's not that any of my old work sucked. It's just that I don't subscribe to the belief that was the best it could be. Like, and I was like, that really stuck with me because it was, yeah. Cause he's like, what keeps me going is because like, I know it can be better. It's not that sucked. It was just that
100%. I can resonate with that 100%.
Yeah. One of my favorite people ask me why I'm obsessed with him. And then I start going into all the things and they're like, wow, he's an interesting guy. So I know, man. One of my favorite people, but no, I love that you take to that. It's part of my inspiration too. You know, obviously they're a huge part of my life, but when it comes to, you know, let's switch gears a little bit on wife. It's like we talked about waifus, let's talk about Orangurock. Like man, like there is a lot to that. I know you have a bunch of characters in Orangurock. So what does each of these characters do? What is Orangurock? What are some of the things that people can do in Orangurock?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll try not to get too micro into it. But,
right.
You know, this was something that I saw as a huge opportunity. Right, when I first got my very first ape and called him American Ape. Right, 5636, and that was something that was very thought out. Like I said, I got into NFTs in February and bought my first one in March. It was a Too Much Lag piece. And so he's now, you know, that just turned into something else recently. So that's a year later that I just kind of bought it, thought it was cool. It was like a 3D piece of art on a loop. And I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, oh, well, after that, it was kind of like, shit, I just spent $1,700 on that. Like, what do I do with it? Right? And I hadn't really heard about Bored Apes yet, right? Because it was March. It was the beginning of the month. Or the month before. And then Bored Apes came out and I saw there were a couple clubhouses on it leading up to it. And I could never make a clubhouse because, you know, my wife and I were talking about how terrible Clubhouse was at the time. And I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm actually learning. There's actually people in here that I'm, you know, able to do Q&As with and ask them questions. And
that's just some smart people.
Dude, it was crazy. And all the founders of all the early companies were on there regularly doing talks, and like that was where like Farouk became a
legend. I was one of the first people I followed.
Personality, I guess you could say. There was like a handful of those people, right?
Yeah.
Wow, Farouk, Ferocious, like I was in all those rooms with all those people, the founders of Artifact, like you know, that's where I was almost every day. I was on Clubhouse a lot, dude. And I know I upset my wife quite a bit because I was always like listening to something, and she was like, "It's dinner time, turn it off." I'm like, "You don't understand who's on here. Like these are innovators, you know."
Right.
So, now she totally gets it because
again, window of opportunity though. Like it's not here forever, and you recognize that, and that's why I'm going to interrupt you real quick. That was one of the parts that going back to the conversation I had yesterday. He was asking why I was so obsessed about it. I said because I felt like I missed out on Web 2. Like I felt like it was and I didn't want to grow in the traditional way Web 2 had. Like what the path was there, but I didn't like the path. And I said, well, like shit, man, like what else is there? And when I saw this, I said, this is a window that's not going to be open forever. This is like the level of access to some of the smartest people in the world is abundant. Like and very rarely is that the case. Like Gary Vee follows me now, and it's like that's
rarely
insane.
In history, man. Rarely, in history, like never before in history. Period.
Right.
Can you connect with people who are at the top of their game across the fucking world.
Yep.
Like,
it's and I saw that. That's probably one of my favorite parts of it. Is in that I was motivated to like switch from esports to Web3, you know, because it was like there's not another opportunity. You know, there's not. This is not going to happen forever. And so anyway, I want to go back like Clubhouse. You know, like
So I ended up leading back to like Orangurock. Like, so at that point, it just made sense to me that, you know, owning the IP was the fucking like most innovative piece of it, right? So I actually, like, literally a few days later, I got mine on the 8th, and the floor was like, I want to say 0.3 or possibly 0.4. And I just started at the bottom and like was looking, and I was like, okay, if I'm gonna own the commercial license for this, or, you know, I know it's the whole other conversation about what the actual permissions are, but if I'm going to be able to reuse this and create a character around this, it has to be something good that I can develop in comics and animation and, you know, all these different things. And so I was just kind of scanning through, and I saw that ape, you know, and I just was like, cool. It has the Bored Ape brand with the hat. The merch hat is so dope. So it'll have that brand recognition instantaneously. I was like, but it has the matching 3D glasses and the stunt jacket. And I was like, I'm just going to spin it as like American Ape, red, white, and blue. Like, let's fucking do it. So I looked at the price and I was like, oh, okay, I'm about to spend another $1,000 on another NFT. And I was like, all right, now this makes sense because I can do a comic out of this. And, So that's what did it. And so from that point, I had always had this vision of, okay, what is this world that this ape's going to live in? And, you know, if you read the comics, we put out 2 so far. We're in production on the 3rd. In between all of the custom pieces we've been doing, and that's, you know, that was really for the community, and also as a deflationary tactic, you know. But it didn't really have to cost anyone, you know, too much, right? You burn some stuff, and you get a custom piece that lives forever. And we're like now over time releasing them as NFT collections that we share the profits with the person who has the piece, right? So. Free marketing with your own ape on it, and it's monetizing your IP. And so from that point forward, once I saw how active the community was, I was like, okay, this is dope. I want to build something with this, and we can innovate in this space rather than throwing our IP that no one has heard of yet and trying to hawk it, right? Because that's what happens to a lot of people is they come out with their project and it's crickets because no one's ever heard of it and no one's ever heard of you. That's just like something I learned before. So I was like, let's use Bored Apes because it's like
brand
thing, and that's why we did it, and that's why I did it. And then I told my business partners, I was like, okay, Bored Apes is the thing, and they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, we're gonna just keep investing in Bored Apes, okay? And that was kind of it. That was like, you know, I mean, it was all like my personal money that I was reinvesting into NFTs anyway, but I saw how that I could build a brand off. And so that was calculated, and then I just kept buying apes whenever I had the opportunity and was liquid enough. So that's how we ended up getting apes and dogs and mutants, and then I started buying Gutter Cat Gang and all that stuff.
Dude, what a community, man!
I saw the community, and again, a lot of that was because of the community, because I see how ravenous and active and engaged and what good people are part of this. So I'm like, we can build a company in Web3 that will allow all of these people to participate and make money on too, not necessarily as like a security token, because that's not what this is. This is just licensing for IP rights, right? And so it was just like, it fits with the model of what we're doing, the world building. And so this was just a natural progression. Orangurock is part of the roadmap for BASYC. A lot of people don't realize that, I guess.
I didn't. So
back, if you look back at the roadmap for Ape Seeks Yacht Club, Orangurock is in there. And this was from like last summer. All right. So the whole point of this was to create a unified universe that all the stories take place in. So Orangurock is essentially this city. And if you read the books, you see how American Ape, gets into the story, how it's introduced, who he is. I was talking about this on another podcast, like, I don't know, last week or something. But the whole idea is it's a case of mistaken identity. He's from another dimension.
Yeah.
And he sees the logo on his hat, and he's like,
that's right.
Well, I need to get to the Bored Ape Yacht Club to figure out, like, who the fuck I am and what I'm doing here, because he has amnesia. So it's all just people thinking he's somebody else when he's really the ape from the movies.
Got
and there's
it.
an actual actor ape who plays him in the movies and on TV that everyone thinks he is. Ryan Aplin. And he owes the mob money, and he's, you know, in outs with the Cheetah Gang. He's pissed off a lot of people. So there's bounty hunters and assassins and the mafia and different gutter gang factions that are all after him. Right?
That line's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it all takes place in Orangurock. So what you're going to see in the game in Sandbox are all these characters. So they're going to be residents. And so that's really what the Orangurock residence is. It's being able to buy in to being a part of the story. So you'll have a retail shop, and you can really sell whatever the fuck you want. Like if you have a PFP collection, or, you know, you make coffee, like Orange Herd, Dottie, one of our mods. He's really active in the Discord.
Yeah.
You know, he sells coffee, right? And so being able to have a space in Orangurock allows you to have your NFTs hanging on the wall that are clickable to buy the NFT.
Love that.
To get your coffee shipped. Like, that's what we're building here. So it's a retail piece that's connected to our story world. It's all like a big LARP, essentially, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
So that's all the Orangurock residents are. Is there's 50 of them. We're doing auctions every day. For the most part, we're doing like 5 per week. Until they're all sold out. And we did collabs with the Board Gutter Ape community. So we have Non-Fungible Human that did a few of the Board Gutter Apes that are going to live in Orangurock and get keys. So everyone gets a resident. It's a PFP created out of our assets. So all the Board Ape qualities, the Gutter qualities, and we have Foxy Fam and Goss Apes. Like, we're connecting. We're basically combining all those different traits to create new characters. And we own all of them, so we're able to do that. And then we're selling those characters basically to be able to be a part of the Orangurock story. So that character that you own, once you sign the licensing agreement, we'll be able to use that character in stories and comics and anime and the game and all of it. And we'll be able to get a percentage of that.
That's insane. Yeah. Head spinning a little bit, man.
Yeah, dude, that's what I'm telling you. Like, we had this plan back in the summertime. And so I was talking to a lot of other apes about this.
Yeah. Dude.
So this is not like, you know, new to us anyway.
Right.
No one had heard of us. No one knew who we were yet. So.
Well, and a lot of people still don't, to be honest. Like, it's criminally undervalued.
We don't do the paid influencer model.
Yeah, man, it's criminally undervalued, man. Because that's a conversation I've had in previous podcasts. Is like, you know, I think if you look at the overall picture of what NFTs represent, it's that a lot of it's a pseudonymous culture, you know, and so a lot of people can be more themselves when they have this character that embodies who they are, and it creates a better world. And there's some disadvantages, but I think it's a net positive, to be honest. But at the same time, though, you know, we have this great identity layer, and it's a super important part. And I guess if we're looking at the ship as we're flying, it's the foundation of the plane. It's like, I've been asking the question. I'm like, okay, now what? Like, what do we do with these things? And like anyone that's taking these things and doing things with them, like, I don't care what it is, just do something with them, you know, because there's too much opportunity to not do something. There's too much opportunity to not create something meaningful. And some people may hate me for saying this, but I think Marvel is like super stale, and I'm not a huge fan of a lot of their content now. Like, it just seems so repetitive. Like, it just seems like I love Marvel. I like Stan built something just insanely special, you know, but I feel like we're at that point where it's like, okay, what's new? You know, like it feels like there needs to be another Marvel. There feels like it's due for another disruptor in the space. And that was one of the things when I first came into Web3, like when I first started seeing this, I said, something in this space is going to be that, you know, like something in this space is going to be that next, and it's probably not going to be for another 5, 10, 20 years, but, you know, eventually it will get to that level, and it may not be, I may not ever see it mature in my lifetime, but I
think you will. And here's the trick.
Okay.
It's like, you know, you have these Web3 companies that are now bridging that gap or making that jump over to the traditional space. If you look at what Yuga Labs was doing, I mean, that's the most obvious example, right?
Right.
But the thing people are not considering, and this is not to knock them at all, what they're doing is amazing, but they've also firmly solidified their place among VCs and agencies and traditional managers and all of those things. That comes with a lot of great things: access, connections, distribution, right?
Yep.
All
Advice.
those things that are important for building a brand and a franchise, right? But they're still shackled in a lot of ways to the old system, because in order to do those deals and have those structures, again, they have to take a risk. And so there's a lot of legal things involved. Like if you look at the most recent KYC, right? That kind of upset a lot of people because they're like, that's so anti-Web3. And then others were like, not a big deal. I'm doxxed, or, I don't care, whatever. Right? So what we're trying to do is just a little bit different. We're trying to build something outside of that system that can then come to the table and have stronger negotiation rights. That's really all it comes down to. Because if we are not kind of shackled to that framework, then we can bob, we can weave, we can grow, we can change our direction. We can, as long as the quality of our content can compete with Marvel and DC and Disney and all those companies, then we feel we have a shot, because we're just offering our audience an alternative to those things. Like you said, people feel like some of the content might be stale, or DC couldn't for a long time figure out how to fucking make a canon universe, right? Stuff like that we're confident, because we've worked with people who have done this, and we've done this ourselves to some degree, right? Or my partners have built big franchises, right? So there's all of that where we feel like we can give it a shot and actually deliver something new, fresh, and that has all the like cool canonized, continuity that a lot of these companies can't figure out, because they go into that system, and that system has rules, and those rules say you got to hire this team to do this and this creative team to do that, and then you get disjointed, disconnected stories. So I think if they're able to kind of stick to that thesis of having continuity in their universe, they will hopefully be good. But I'm always cautiously optimistic when agencies get involved, because they have a tendency to be, cannibalistic to their own clients. If they know a deal is going to go through with The Rock, and that might damage, another smaller project, they'll do it. They don't care, because they're going to make more money on The Rock than that little project. So they'll prioritize whatever the transactional,
value is. Yeah. 100%, man. That leads me to when it comes to building this world out, and when it comes to, I guess, creating these stories, do you think there needs to be another one of you to are there more of you doing this? Do there need to be more of you or is this going to be you build this massive thing and then you partner with all of these major brands? Is it, you know what I mean? Cause I feel like the future is this is obviously I believe this is the future, else I wouldn't be here. I think you're the same. But do you I guess the better question is, once this is, I guess, primed and ready to go, and y'all are at full steam and you're sleeping, hopefully close to 8 hours, what do you see Myth Division as? Is it going to be when you're leveraging Marvel, leveraging DC, or is it going to be the opposite? Or, you know what I mean? How do you see this playing out when it comes to a mature Myth Division?
No, it's a very good question. And, I've thought about this a lot, and I've had conversations with my partners a lot. And ultimately, what we hope is that what we're building will inspire those companies to start acting more like us, and not have predatory deals and, fuck people over at the first turn. You know what I mean? Because if we can build this up and have our own audience that sustains us and comes back and, will watch our content on our platform, right? Then our hope is that the Netflixes and all those other companies will sort of have to compete with the deals that we're offering our creatives, right? Because we're going to be structuring things in a much different way. We already are, right?
I got you.
Starting with the apes, right?
Yeah.
Because that's your IP. That's what you can license. You're going to get at least 25% if it's just, you and me in an image or whatever, right? It's structured differently depending on how many people are in a thing. Sure. Right? But the more people you have in a thing, the less of a cut you get too. So we're also thinking about how we can position these projects so that people can participate meaningfully, low person count, for maximum result on the exploitation of the IP, right?
Right.
So what we're hoping is that we start, getting a reputation where creators who would normally go and pitch something to Disney or to Netflix will instead come to MIP Division and pitch it to us, and we'll say, great, you're the writer, you're the creator. We'll support, you doing the show running, or, if you have the experience, obviously.
Right. Sure.
Or we'll at least work towards helping you get there so that you can be building your own shit and have like 20, 30% instead of 1 to 5%, which is what Disney and all these other companies, I don't want to say specifically Disney, but there's a lot of other companies and production companies and studios that if you're the writer and you write this amazing, Oscar-worthy script, there's politics involved. So sometimes they have to bring in another writer to rewrite, even if you don't need the rewrite. And then you lose that credit and you lose that percentage. And like, you know what I mean? Like, we're trying to build something that is an alternative to that for artists too. So it's starting small right now with a focus on just our content and what we can put out. But, I'm still looking at all these Web3 companies that are aligned with Web2 people, and they're still doing the predatory contracts. They're still doing this, like, sign here and you're locked up for years, right? You can't work with anybody else. You can't do anything. I'm like, we're trying to do the opposite. Obviously, we have to protect ourselves too and make sure, like, some people have already done this, right? Where they were like, yeah, I'm a Diamond Hands. I turned their character into something in the book, and then all of a sudden they've sold it. And I'm like, dude, you didn't even tell me you sold it. Like, this is not good, So there's those kinds of scenarios that we have to try and avoid. But, for the most part, we're trying to just offer something better for creators and for an audience where you feel like you have a real, like, ownership of what's being created, right? Or your creative pursuits are being supported, or you're learning from experts, that kind of stuff. Like, that's down the road. We still want to bring in our friends and collaborators to do Q&As. And that's part of what the Alpha Access coin will get you is access to these, like, high profile Q&As on screenwriting, on how to turn your thing into a movie, because there's a lot of people just don't know. And we know the information. I'm just so busy, and my partners are so busy right now that we can't build out that education piece just yet. But we will be getting there soon. So that comes with scaling.
I love that, man. The way immediately what I thought about when you were explaining that is how Elon approaches Tesla, or like what his approach is with Tesla. It's like his job at, like, cause I watched some of his interviews back in like 2013, 2014, 2015, when everyone was grilling him and he had this just super ambitious idea, like, and he was getting shit on by everyone. But one of his things is that I remember very, like, clearly what he says, like, I'm not trying to be the only person. I want to drive the industry forward with Tesla. Like, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's stepping out in front. It's lonely at the top. It's lonely up front. A lot of criticism, but you look at the rest of and it's wild watching some of his videos from 2013, 2014, because just about every deadline that he set, he's actually executed on. And
that's impressive. Like, that's hard for even, like, it's hard for us.
It's insane. And because you watch, you're like, okay, how true is that? But then, like, that time comes around, you watch another interview and he's rolling out what he said he was going to 5 years ago. So, but that's the way I look at this. And I like that, where it's, because I've been preaching a lot of, based on my experience in Web3 and what I see it can do, is that this is a very and mindset versus Web2, which is an or mindset. It's like, it's usually a this or that. And what you just described lines up exactly with that.
That's the huge opportunity that I see with the space. I mean, not just like with the commercial IP and all that, but just the decentralization. I know that's such a, like, tricky word because very few things are truly decentralized. And that's the truth. The reality is, like, 99% of what we think is decentralized is actually not, right? And that's the big, like, elephant in the room when it comes to Web3. But I know that those things are going to pop up, and there will be a way, because there's tons of people actively working on this. And that's, again, the media, the government, a bunch of those entities are working against this. It's not in their best interest to lose that centralized control, obviously. So, we're getting all that propaganda, but I think we're going to see in the next few years a huge shift. And so I'm just trying to structure things in such a way that we're prepared for that shift. And we're, like, actively working towards what's 2-3 years from now. Right. How are we going to engage with content? How are we going to be telling stories? How are people going to be investing their own money into content, right? As a viewer, as an audience member. And I just put myself in those shoes and I say, how would I do it as a person who, grew up on Marvel and Star Wars and all those things. And now I feel a little, I'm just less interested in some of those things. And, that's fine. Some of the stories probably just aren't for me. And I'm not the audience for certain things. That's what happens, right? When you're building a brand. So I'm just trying to offer those things that I know that I would spend lots of money on. And that's why I joke, like when I sweep the floor sometimes, it's not because it's like a tactical thing always. It's just kind of like, I love our artwork. I love our projects. I love the artists that we work with. I pick them for a reason. So it's hard for me to even think about one of ones because I'm like, well, that means that I can't have one. I don't know if I can handle that. You know what I mean? It's like that. I'm so passionate about what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and it shows, man. Y'all have been building, and you've been building quietly, and just
I feel like I've been so loud. Actually, it's pretty funny.
I don't perceive it like that because but that's good though. Because to me, there's it. I've said this story before, but I feel like last year was really special because there was a lot of energy, but there wasn't a lot of noise. And I think 2022 there is so much noise that it's hard to trust and figure out what's true, what's not, what's a good investment, what's not, because when I came into the space, now obviously it's not 100% bulletproof, but the way I approached it was that anyone who had an ape or a punk, they could generally be trusted early last year, generally, not 100%.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know about that, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, but that was the way I did it, and maybe it's just my own intuition or the vibes I got from certain ones, and maybe I just.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of really good people in both communities that are genuinely trying to help and educate, share
and I felt
resources.
that. Yeah. Now though, towards the end of last year, that thesis was gone. I stopped doing that. I stopped, because it
but
was
the way I look at it, and it's no knock to him at all. But once Jimmy Fallon got an ape, at that point, I started seeing people come in that were legitimately only coming in for the exploitation of the community.
Right.
And it wasn't about what can I also
contribute
to the community.
Yep.
Right. And I called a couple of people out on it actually. And, so far my track record is pretty good. They've proven themselves to be shady as fuck.
Yeah, man. Exactly. It's interesting that you mentioned that. It was right around that time. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Where it just, because when I try to tell, it's one of the challenges I have with onboarding people is that I want to get them excited, but I want them to look past just the monetary aspect, and it's hard it's really hard to do that for people who,
of course,
don't get it.
Because you're looking at it as through a crypto lens too, right? And
the
conversation around crypto is really it's a bottom line currency, right?
Yeah.
How are we going to make money? And so a lot of people come into the space literally just to flip. Yep. So that's why these scammers do so well, man, because they're preying on that mindset. And then on the flip side, and there's people that are here for both, like myself too, right? But on the flip side, you have the collector mindset. And these people understand historical value and just aesthetic, right? Mm-hmm. And brand value, right? There's those things that, Gary Vee, we talked a little bit about him before the show, but he talks about a lot. Right?
Yep.
And so there's a lot of validity to that. Whereas there's also the mindset of okay, I'm in it to buy 6 NFTs and hope that I can flip 4 of them, right? Or all 5 of them and then maybe keep none, right? There's that mindset too. So it's tough, that's why it's cool to see there are still people in the space that are actively trying to help people and warn people what to look out for, so they don't get rugged.
Yeah, man. At the same time, though, before we wrap things up, at the same time, though, I had to cut my teeth a really hard way. Everyone's got to cut.
We all have.
Yeah, I'll admit it on the pod. I think I have before, but if I haven't, I will now. Back in August when I was just getting started and I was super emotional about everything, I willingly gave up my seed phrase, and lost. It was actually right before one of your drops. It was actually right before Waifu. Dude, I was gutted. I had enough. I had just made a bankroll of ETH on World of Women. I did really well. I transferred some to the vault, but it was a Collabland issue, and I won't go into all of it. It was just it just new at the time. But I willingly gave it up because there was no red flags that they were actually a scammer.
That was when they were first doing the Discord DM. Tactics.
This was Telegram.
That summer.
This was Telegram.
Oof. Yeah.
I never used Telegram. So someone, and actually, you know what? I will tell the story because I think it's valuable for people, is that when I got a hardware wallet and I was having issues with the hardware wallet with Collabland, because that was when it was still, Chrome had just updated, Ledger. It was during that whole fiasco. And so I went to their Telegram. They said, we'll never DM you first. So what I did is I shot the message and then I got a DM. And I naturally, there was no red flags that went off because I'm like, okay, if this person DM me, then they're part of support. And
right, you didn't really understand what we won't DM you first really meant.
Right, I didn't know that.
DM me first. I posted a message first.
Right. I posted the message first, and then I get so it everyone will give each other shit in Web3 for like giving up their seed phrase, but it's just everyone makes mistakes. And I'm just glad I did.
And I lost 15K. So.
Yeah.
Not from a seed phrase, but from another vulnerability. Clicking on a link,
I was gutted, man. I was gutted. There is no worse feeling.
It's a terrible feeling, dude. It's a terrible feeling to get scammed. Like,
it
traumatizes people. Like, I can't even imagine the people who lose like millions than some people have. And I'm like, yo, that would fucking wreck me.
Yeah, 100%.
I pick up and move on because it just can't dwell. But shit, it's still painful.
But at the same time, if you really understand Web3, you understand that like you get rewarded for your participation. There was another community I bought in prior to. A week later, I won just about half of what had gotten stolen back in a giveaway, in a game, and so it's just like, look,
I got Ape Drop after losing 15K, so I was just like, thank God. Like
the shit. I think people understand that. Cut your teeth, but still show up. Like if you really believe in it, like it's a row bump. It's not exiting. Like it's just
you can't let it destroy you. It's just learning opportunity, right? It's a failure that's a learning opportunity.
Yeah, man, 100%, man. So let's wrap things up. If there this is going to be an entirely selfish question, but for Myth Division Alpha Access token holders, is there anything that you can share that's in the pipeline that you haven't shared, or a teaser that you haven't shared already?
Let's see, that I haven't shared already.
Because this will be heads up. This will be about 2 weeks.
Some people might not know the potion. You're going to be able to mint potions for free, even if you don't have a waifu. So you'll be able to get potions. That's one sort of immediate thing. You're going to be able to mint Ape Seeks Yacht Club #2 for free. You won't have to pay. I mean, you'll pay for gas, but you'll get a free claim. You'll be able to do the waifu allies at no cost. You'll be able to mint those for free. And the weapons, you'll be able to mint again, just for gas, right? So that's already 4 things. I don't know if all that is announced yet. I think I mentioned on Twitter the other day, we're going to be moving into production on a few movies pretty soon. And anyone who has an alpha coin, we're going to probably in Sandbox, but it may be another way. We're going to do behind the scenes experience for you guys, I guess you could say, when we're on set filming. So just being able to have access to things that we think are cool, that we look, if you never know what talent will be announcing, and so you never know who you might
run into,
end up having a little moment with as an alpha access coin holder. And honestly, you never know. We still have a good amount of tokens in our stock that we're reserving. So you never know who may become an alpha access coin holder. I'll just say that.
I like that.
Yeah, and we're saving them for when we're actually doing stuff. That's really cool at the highest levels. So as more and more brands and people start kind of getting involved, you may see some bigger names start joining the community. You never know. So,
love it, man. Love it, Ramon. Yeah. Well, man, it's been an absolute treat to sit down and chat with you, shoot the shit. Yeah.
Likewise,
yeah. Yeah, man. So for those who haven't heard of Myth Division, want to learn more about it, what's the best way for them to get started? What's a good starting point?
Twitter, I'd say. Our Twitter has a lot of updates, and then for real in-depth information, the Discord is the place to be, because it's pretty much 24/7 customer service, I guess you could say, and that's just more mods who are in there.
I can personally speak to that.
The answers, you've been in there.
Yeah,
and we're just whenever we're just shooting the shit, I come in there a lot. I try and come in once a day if I'm not too busy.
Yeah.
But our mods and our people in there are like super, super kind. They're just the best people on the planet, dude. So I think our admin said the other day, you guys are far too pure and righteous for the world because everyone's so nice, dude. Yeah. I mean, giving free shit to each other, like it's amazing. Yep. I'm in awe at our community, so it's pretty welcoming.
Yeah, man, definitely something special. Well, Ramon, hang tight with me just a second before this. Once I stop recording, so this uploads. But again, it's been an absolute pleasure, man, and I'll be seeing you in Discord.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it, dude. Thanks again.